Hello, adventurers, and welcome back to the Dragon's Lair. Today we're going to be discussing our favorite lined hero, Death the Kid. So, let's jump right into it, shall we? Before we start, I do have to mention, we're going to do things a little out of order. For those of you who have seen the show, it's what Kid would want. For those of you who haven't, go watch the show. We're going to start off with Patty instead of Kid. Starting off with her constitution, we never really see her take any hits, so I'm going to have to say somewhere around 10. As for intelligence, yeah, about that. So, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. Do you remember the whole test episode? Yeah. Instead of, taking the test, or, doing something productive, she spends the entire time turning her test paper into a giraffe. So, for intelligence, I'm gonna say it's pretty low. Somewhere around, probably a 6. Wisdom, though, you got a couple of arguments here. First off, you could say that it's not wise to turn your test paper into a giraffe. And you would be right. One could also argue, though, that it is wise to do what you would like instead of doing what people are trying to make you to do. So it's really up to you. I'm going to give kind of a range between somewhere around 8 to 12. It's really your call. As for charisma, she's likable, she's nice. A lot of people would call her probably naive, though. And that sort of thing. She's very talkative, though. The problem is, a lot of what she says doesn't make any sense. So... But she's kind when she talks. I'm gonna go somewhere around 14 to 16. People like her, but she's crazy. Yeah. Moving into Death, the Kid. Starting off with strength. He's not weak, but he's not super strong, especially when you compare him to someone like Blackstar. And he never really uses his strength, because Blackstar is usually always around, right? So, you can't get a really great idea for how strong Kid is, but going off of general looks and the fact that he never uses it, I'd say probably somewhere around 10 to 12. Am I good there?
Yeah.
Cool. Moving into dexterity. This is probably the score that he's gonna use more. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. First off, D&D, in D&D, guns are usually more dexterity based. For the most part. Something like what he uses, the pistols, are usually going to be a little more dexterity based. Just because quick draws and things like that. So there's that. Pair that up with the fact that he doesn't really do a whole lot of stealthing around, per se, but he does go back behind people's back and try to figure out what is happening throughout the school, if that makes sense. So, yeah, he's not your typical, rogue that's sneaking around in the dark, but he was sneaking around doing different things, and no one caught him. So there is that. Pair that with things like, we see him take a few things here and there, namely books, to kind of, learn more about history and things that are going on throughout the school, and the fact that he rides a skateboard, but a flying skateboard. He's going to be pretty dexterity-based. Skateboard thing doesn't have a whole lot to do with anything, though. But, I don't know where else to put it. It's got to go somewhere. And, it's not charisma-based, so, I don't know where else to put it. So here we are. But as for the dexterity score, I'm probably going to have to go somewhere around 18 to 20. Makes a lot of sense. As for constitution... he gets into a couple of fights, but most of his fights are resolved pretty easily, with him taking very few, if any, hits. He duels Blackstar a couple of times, and he does take a few solid hits there. But the vast majority of my justification for this score is going to be the final fights, namely with Vacation. So he gets battered and bruised like they were, especially when he was trying to protect Maka. And he manages to get back up and continue going, which is signs for a pretty solid constitution. Now, I'm not going to max him out, because he did have help for that fight. So, somewhere around 16 to 18 would make a lot of sense for that. Moving into intelligence. Yeah, about that. So, you remember the test episode? Well, he didn't score very well on the test. Now, one might argue that he never got the chance to show what he truly knew because he was so busy trying to make his name perfectly on the test. And that's a valid argument, but it's not going to help your case. So, based on the test episode, he wouldn't be doing very high. Wouldn't have a very high intelligence score. That being said, a little later on, we see him working to figure out what's going on behind the scenes of the school. So that's gonna count for something here. Honestly, I would say 12 to 14, maybe 16 by late game. Moving into wisdom. This is kind of what allowed him to go and see if he could figure out what was happening behind the scenes. So it's gonna be a little higher, or a little better at a higher level, because he was able to go in and figure things out. Now, he wasn't right 100% of the time, but he was able to figure a few things out, and ultimately, him knowing what was going on, or knowing what he had, was what allowed him to kind of trick, I'll say, his dad into telling him what was actually going on behind the scenes of the school. So it's pretty high there. That being said, then we have the wisdom factor of having to have everything perfectly symmetrical, right? So that's going to account for something. I would probably put his score at similar to intelligence at 14 to 16. It just kind of works, in my opinion. Moving lastly into charisma. It's kind of weird. He's kind of different. Right? So he's got kind of a cool kid vibe going on, right? And he's also kind of got the goth vibe going on. But he doesn't fit either of those two normal stereotypes. So it's a little odd there. Pair that with the fact that he is relatively nice to everyone he comes across, unless they're trying to kill him.
Yeah.
But that's, I wouldn't be nice to someone that's trying to kill me either, so that's kind of fair. So there's that sort of thing. But pair all of that together, and it's kind of different. He's kind of weird. For the score, I'm going to say somewhere around 12 to 14, maybe 16 by late game. Just because he's really nice, he's really likable, and he doesn't really fit the two vibes that he's going for, or that he has going on, rather. So that it's kind of interesting, but I guess it would really be up to you and the way you wanted to play him. Moving into Liz. For Constitution, we never really see her take any hits either, so I'm going to go 0 there. As for Intelligence, yeah, she's the only character that doesn't want to go into what looks like the beginnings of a horror movie. So for that, I'm going to give her a 16 to 18. In Wisdom, same thing. She's the only person that is wise enough to see, oh, this is a horror movie. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go 16 to 18 for that as well. Then we move down to Charisma, and it's a little odd. She's kind of like the popular girl at school, I want to say. But she doesn't really act like the popular girl at school, right? I'm gonna make some people mad, but I'm gonna know what I'm going for here. She's really nice, but she does have that vibe of, if you're dumb, I'm not gonna deal with you. So it's kind of like that. But she is willing to talk to people, especially ones that you might not normally think she would be associated with, right? Like Soul or someone like that. But she's nice. She's chill. All in all, I'm gonna say not super high though. I'm gonna go probably with 14, somewhere right around in there, because she's got that popular girl vibe, but she doesn't act like one. If that makes sense. So, 14. Am I good for the scores?
For cons, you said 0, but you meant 10.
Thank you. I didn't hear myself say that. Thank you. For which one? Who did I say that for?
Liz.
Liz? Cool.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. Thanks for catching that. Into the build. So we're just building Death the Kid. In the show, he's a human. So I would go variant for the sharpshooter feat. For the proficiency, go with acrobatics, because he does cool, sick tricks on the skateboard, yo.
Yep.
Yeah. As for kind of like a not straightforward sort of build for the race, I could kind of see him as either a high elf or a drow. And if you do go through that route, you might think about speccing into Elven Accuracy, which is a feat specifically for elves.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna do that, go with the Unearthed Arcana version. It's the same thing, but slightly different and better. But yeah. As for the class, we're gonna go fighter until at least level 18. But at that point, you might as well go through to level 20. Really not a whole lot you're going to get elsewhere from it. You're going to go archery for your fighting style, and then Meister for the subclass. Right? At level 3, am I forgetting anything?
Nah.
Okay, you kind of had that look, but it could have just been me projecting. At level 3, you're going to go with Death Cannon. Go ahead and read out what that is.
Death Cannon. Prerequisite at least one firearm weapon mode.
Yes, and we'll get into that here in a minute.
You may sacrifice your action this turn to gain advantage on any ranged attacks using your firearm weapon partner until the end of your next turn. You may do this once per long rest.
Cool. So you sacrifice your say that again. You
Action.
sacrifice your action to get advantage on weapon attacks against anyone.
Yeah.
Within your range, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And that lasts for a turn, correct? Until the end of your next turn.
Yeah.
Cool. You may do this once per long rest, correct?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, so after level 3, things get a little weird. I left this up to interpretation on purpose, but it's really up to your DM. If your DM is going to allow you to base what features and things you can take based off of your player level rather than your class level, you might want to spec into something like Warlock, possibly Paladin, but probably Warlock. However, if your DM says, no, it's got to be based off of your class level, you've got to go through levels 18. If that's the case, you might want to look into some of the other videos just to kind of see what other abilities you have available and what you might want to do. But keep in mind that Kid doesn't have those abilities per se, so when you start doing that, you're going to kind of back away from the actual build of Death the Kid. Yeah. Then you have the thing here where your DM might make you take multiple weapons to justify your ability to dual wield Liz and Patty. That's DM's discretion as well. But skipping down a few to level 18, you would take Ultra Death Cannon. So go ahead and spec over that.
Cool. You keep the benefits of Death Cannon when you take this feature. When you take this ability at 18th level, you may sacrifice your turn, actions, bonus actions, and movement to attempt to kill an enemy. They must succeed on a dexterity saving throw equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your dexterity modifier, or take 10d10 necrotic damage. Half on a success. Demons, mortals, witches, and Kishin have disadvantage on the save. This ability can only be done once per long rest.
So yeah. Did it give a turn that the attack happens?
No.
Okay, so for that we would say at the end of that turn, you would sacrifice everything you could do that turn to make that one attack, and it is a really powerful attack. Once per long rest. So yeah, if you're confused by the demons, immortals, witches, and Kishin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go check out my last video on Maka, where I went through all of those equivalencies. Just for the sake of ease, I'm not going to go back through it again. Is there anything else there that I haven't already covered? Because there were some things written after that I've already covered. I don't think so.
If you stay fighter, recommend looking into other videos to fill out your ability.
Yeah, I said that, but cool. Good reminder.
Other than that, no.
Cool. That brings us to the last thing we have. Items.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge spoiler. So if you haven't seen the show and you've stuck around thus far, I do not recommend watching any further. Until you've finished the series. Spoiler alert. 3, 2, 1. We should be good. The Lions of Sanzu. Could be mispronouncing that. Don't think I am. Don't really care. I'm going to specify now, this is for DM use only. Because if you were to give it to players, it would kind of shout favoritism, things like that. So don't do it. And it's important to note that this is not exactly the way it happened in the show, but kind of. We sacrificed what it did in the show to give you an ability for the Meister class, and we're doing something else that it also did in the show for the actual ability of this. But the way I would create it is I would do it kind of like the half-orc thing, where if they're dropped to 0 HP, instead they're dropped to 1, and they take a turn immediately. Is that what it says? Is there anything else there? I think so.
No.
Yeah. So they lie dormant until needed or unlocked. When they're unlocked, they're at 1 hit point instead of 0, and they can take a turn immediately. This allows them to maybe heal, use it as an attack, do whatever they need to do or want to do immediately. Then normal combat resumes. Afterwards, the Lines of Sanzu would complete themselves and remain dormant again, either permanently or, if the DM would like, until future use. But that is all I have for you fine adventurers today. Be on the lookout for my next video, which will be on Blackstar and Tsubaki. If you can't possibly wait until then, feel free to come check out my Discord or come hang out on Twitch. All links to my social media will be down in the description below. Other than that, I will catch you all later.